Welcome back to another exciting weekly episode of Sports to Suits. I'm Amanda Banks. I am your host, and weekly I highlight former athletes that have done not only incredible things in sports, but are also seeing success in the business community. And there is nobody else that I can think of that has done some incredible things in sports, but is also killing it in business than this guy. Bryan Jordan. Bryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi Amanda, how you doing? Thank you so much for the lovely intro. You spoke me up quite a bit there.
Well, and the video that was done by one of my good friends, like it totally amps you up.
Well, I do appreciate it. I do.
Well, cool. Well, we're going to keep the energy high today. There's a lot for us to dive into. Like I said, you've done some incredible things, not only on the field, but also off the field as well. So, why don't you share, as people are popping in, a little bit just about, let's start with your athletic background because it's quite impressive.
Sure. So let's see. The whole sports realm, as far as soccer, has changed so much within my lifetime. I can say, when I was growing up, club soccer was a huge thing. My dad got me involved because my sister played. And right away, kind of probably around the age of 8. I started at the age of 4, but at the age of 8, I was like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm kind of one of those, and we'll talk about this like mentality wise. I'm one of those guys that once I kind of get on a stream of like focus, that's just what it is. We're going there. And so I'm very competitive. I started playing club. My dad was my coach, as I said. Um, and things went well. I was kind of noticed over time, but not one of the biggest players in California. It's a huge base for talent here. um, and ended up going to like a college showcase tournament. Got noticed by Oregon State. My sister went to Cal State Dominguez Hills, and that's where the Galaxy played at the time, so I was always just sold as well, that's where I'm going. But it didn't turn out that way. I ended up going up to Oregon, the Beavers, and did pretty well up there too. After I kind of just went for sports, to be honest. My family had some worry because I was a pretty decent student, but as far as my focus on just the schoolwork was never totally there. But once I went to college, and you get to choose what you want to learn, I really enjoyed that, and I was getting straight A's my first year. I was enrolled for graphic design. I ended up dropping out of that because they wouldn't push me ahead quick enough. I had to actually paint and stuff, and I wasn't about that. Um, Funny story, actually. Yeah. So I was in art. I was I had been doing graphic design since I was younger, and I was asking them, "Hey, I know you have to be a junior, but can't you just bump me along? Like it's like here's my work. Like you see this." And they're like, "No, everyone in the program has to do this." And I was like, "Well, if you don't switch me, I'm dropping out today. I'm switching to business because I know the art side." And they were like, "Well, we can't do it. We'd have to do it for everybody." So I left the office, switched majors. But yeah, back on to soccer. I dropped out of school to play for the Portland Timbers up there because I went on trial with the Galaxy. They couldn't sign me. They made me a deal. If you do well at Portland, we'll come and we'll buy your contract out. And that's exactly what ended up happening. I was one of the leading scorers at the Portland Timbers. And so the Galaxy bought my contract, and that's kind of how it all started as far as like the major top league here in America.
So, what was the difference between the college level and the professional level? Because I think that, like, you're saying, like, you were uber competitive at every single level, right? But, like, what was a little bit different from college versus the professional aspect?
It's a great question. I think you would know this as well. Like the funny thing about sports, right? And I got the chills thinking about this. Any game you play, whether it's a video game or sports, all these kids over time are the best from where they come from, right?
Mm,
And that comes with confidence, that comes with a little bit of ego, that comes with all this stuff. And then you get put into this just one rung higher, right? All of those kids are the best, absolute best from where they come from, too. And so, what I would say was the biggest difference is just the clear cut difference of how good each person is at that level. Um, Obviously, too, in college, some of these kids don't necessarily want to go professional. And so, you know, college is for fun as well. Well, once you get to the pro level, everyone, yeah, we want to have fun, but like in your own mind, you're keeping yourself to the highest thing possible. And so that was a big difference I noticed.
Well, and it was your goal always to play professionally. Like even as a young kid, you're like, I'm going to go professional. Is that right?
Yes, but I find that's not, the more I say that to people I know too, and that's not the typical as far as what I find. I guess people are more so like, oh, I just want to see what happens. But me, I don't know why. I get some idea of what I think would be good. Oh, that sounds like a great life. And then boom, I shoot everything for it. Yeah.
So you stopped college, you went to play professionally. Tell me a little bit about your professional soccer career and kind of how long you were in the sport professionally.
Sure. So I think my timeline was just under 9 years professionally, because too, it's so funny with seasons, right? I think it was actually possibly 9 seasons, but that into 8 years. So I would have tried to finish school. I only had 16 credits left, which was like 3 months. But I was in Corvallis, Oregon, and I got, after the whole Galaxy thing, they sent me to Portland to try it out for that team. And it was about a 2-hour commute. And again, just like I'm telling you, you pick one thing and you go with it. I was thinking in my head, if I want to be a pro and my focus or whatever, I don't want to be thinking about school. I don't want to be thinking. So if there was a chance of that, I was dropping everything for this chance. And it was snowing during trials and everything. And, no one else was there with my family. But we ended up making it work out. And so that's just what the decision was, to drop out. I got kind of a little lost on your question there, though. Just remind me.
Well, we can totally move on because I'm really curious. So you played professionally for 9 years,
yes, 9 years,
right? And you were playing against some of the greatest players at the time. I mean, that's the highest level that you can possibly go. So I'm really curious, like for anybody that's listening, like when you're playing against the top players, even around the world, what is different about these people than other people that are getting them to achieve that level of success?
Sure. And we'll just right before that, it's going to respect the Euro soccer buffs here real quick. I guess they would complain that, European football is the absolute top level, and just showing my respect. Look, American soccer has come a far way. So as far as America's concerned, yes, I definitely played at top level. I did get called in for the United States men's 23 team, never at the full squad. But with that being said, yes. So 9 years professionally, David Beckham, Landon Donovan, Robbie Keane all played on my team, some of the huge world names around the world. And so because of those, we would get invited to a lot of friendlies. And just like you're saying, I have played against the top competition in the world, Cristiano Ronaldo's, Leo Messi's, huge names that I'm sure everybody knows here. And it was just so neat, and I'm so appreciative that I got those chances because, again, I told you I'm very competitive. And this might sound stupid, but honestly, look, I bet you a lot of people out there haven't even heard my name, right? But in my head, and as far as, what my results were on the field in those games, until they beat me, that they're not better. They're not, you gotta prove it to me. Right. And so I played Cristiano 3 times. He actually scored 1 goal in one of the games, made me look decently bad, but those other ones, he didn't score. Okay. So these guys literally, as far as focus, I think in the world of soccer too, technical ability, because there's so much money and that is the top sport in those regions, there is a quality difference. And when you have everybody on the team that can perform at that level, it just becomes so much smoother. So the play is even easier for them to finish. And that is still a difference. I don't know if that answers your question totally, but I just feel like mentality, these guys are dialed in, taking care of their bodies, doing the right things. And that is a huge difference at the end of the day.
Well, in soccer, like I have a deep appreciation for soccer. It is it's known as the beautiful sport, but there's so much strategy
Sure.
that goes into it. And looking at it, you may not recognize the amount of strategy that goes into it, but like you have to be so mentally tough and you have to always forecast your next move and you have to be, even reading your player. Like
Sure.
it's so sophisticated. So share a little bit about this strategy aspect because I don't think a lot of people that are not super diehard soccer fans recognize how beautiful the game is, but two, how important the strategy aspect is.
That's an amazing question because all sports are different, right? Like there's little minute details that I don't understand about gymnastics that, I could really get into and I'd be so interested because people don't really realize. In soccer, it's so funny because all my friends that don't really know the back end of it, what people don't really get is because it's a fluid sport. Yes, you have a coach, right? And yes, he's dictating certain things. He gets to make crucial, decisions with substitutions, but it's on the fly.
Yeah.
So he, over the course of that season, throughout practice and all that stuff, has to instill into you guys what your playing style is and what these certain goals are that you're trying to achieve, right? And so on the field, that's why a lot of times you'll have your own player cussing out your other guy, not because of, that guy's a bad player or anything. No, like because he can perform a certain way, and we're just trying to demand that out of it, right? And so, yeah, strategy with the formations and all that stuff. The most interesting thing I find about soccer is it was basically created to push the human body to that fatigue point, right? So at a certain minute, every single person on that field, depending on how that game went for them, right, they're starting to feel it. And the first thing that breaks is your mental, okay? And so that's why you see so many goals in the last minutes of games. And so when new fans will watch a sport, like these are things that happen in the game because those are the tough things to get over. So as far as strategy, there's a whole bunch of different ones, but as far as like the interesting things that maybe people that didn't know watch those things because you're dictating things as it goes. There is set pieces and all that stuff, but it's way more fluid than a lot of other sports.
So let's talk a little bit. So you had a very successful soccer career and you didn't finish school. So how was the transition out of soccer after you got done playing? Because I've talked a lot about this and we've highlighted a lot about this in other episodes, but I'm really curious, like playing at the professional level, what was that like? Like, how did your career in soccer end? And what was the transition out of the sport like for you?
Let's see. That question is a rough one too, because I feel like every player kind of has a certain timeline that they wish they had or whatever it is. And I think I ended pretty early. If you knew me as a soccer player, I was a very rough, get in there, put your body on the line, and you can only really support that for so long, right? And as dumb as it might sound, is like, no, my mind was like, just do it. Just like that goes along with me, right? And so I had a great career, as you're saying, for as long as I made it. I played 5 years for the Galaxy, ended up having some memorable goals, scored against AC Milan, which is one of the top clubs in Italy. But transitioning from sports, then out of sports, playing in Los Angeles, there's a lot of entertainment going on. And we would have these preseason kind of talks with the league, and it was funny to look at it like we were in sports, but that is entertainment in a way. And so kind of opened my mind to this. And at the time I had a girlfriend that was an actress, and so I got more and more friends that were in that industry, and they kept asking me, hey, I think there's an opportunity to take this meeting, whatever. And I don't know, looking back, I might have just showed up to a few of these, but because I believe that I don't know if you believe in energies or whatever. With extreme focus, I think at some point it just becomes this flow and you attract those things into your life. And so I guess I wasn't willing, because I knew what I wanted most, and that was sports. So I wasn't even willing to see these things, right? And so I kind of kept my head down, just did sports, body caught up with me. But I went to Germany my last year, and as injuries kind of accumulated, one of my friends, Liz Hernandez, she was in radio. She had suggested, you come back, take this meeting for me, please. And I did. And it worked out great because then they got me kind of more into the commercial world. So I was still using soccer in commercials and stuff. And then that branched into, I was doing well. And my agents were like, hey, you should look into theatrical too. So that's kind of what it looked like as far as the immediate transition. But now I've been doing a whole bunch of business stuff on top of that.
So when you initially did that, so you got into film and acting and commercials and things like that, kind of initially as like a curiosity thing, but then you were like, oh, this is something I'm really interested in. And I would imagine if you were hyper focused in soccer, having your mindset focus on something, outside of soccer was probably a really healthy thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, I still do, but I dreamed about going like to practice still for like 2 or 3 years after that. Like actual, I thought it was real. I see the same coach and everything. Got a little tear there. But
That's okay. I think I'm going to the Olympics still and I'm old.
really, yeah,
I mean,
no,
it's in your blood, right? You
yes,
can't take that out. It always will be.
for sure. And so I don't know. I think even though I wasn't ready to really give that up or whatever, I think, life is life and you got to take that the doors it opens up for you. So I was appreciative for those things. I do feel like too, though, with that, any player I do talk to, because I'm pretty passionate about this, every player faces this. You at a much earlier age than me, remember you were telling me with gymnastics, and I just tell every player, like, I wish for them to not turn their back on it because it's still there and it's going to supply you opportunities too. So if you can, face it and allow it to give back to you because you gave so much to it over the course of the years.
Well, and you leverage during your sports time, like you leverage that from a marketing, branding, networking standpoint to your advantage. Share a little bit about, because there are, existing athletes that tune into the show. So like, what would you say to existing athletes that know, hey, I may get hurt or my sports career may end? How do I leverage my existing scenario to my advantage?
Oh my gosh. So the game's so different too. Different now. If Instagram was around when I was playing, so I was one of those guys. So I believe a teammate of mine, Edson Buttle, right? Back then, I believe this might have been 2009, 2010, something around then, tells me about Twitter. And I've always been a big tech guy, but somehow this missed my radar. And we both got on there, and I believe we were on there before the Galaxy was. So when we were traveling, it was just really funny because people would come to you as that source of just like news, because I was saying little funny stories about my teammates on planes or whatever it was. And so social media is a huge outlet. And I think most every athlete now is totally tapped into that. And I think that makes it so much easier. But what I would tell them too is there's this dynamic of like what we're talking about focus a lot today of just, does that bring you out of the sport? And I do think you must look at it like this. Number one, as far as your performance, keep on yourself to keep focused and performing. But like my schedule, I was home most every day around noon, right? And I didn't want to be on my feet. So I'd go, I might play some video games. Well, I did have some time to entertain some opportunities off the field. And I think as those opportunities come, you just need to do self-checks as far as, no, I got to perform well for all that stuff to come, right? So don't confuse yourself. But at the same time, be open to what these ideas are, and that might position you to, whether it's a business deal or let's say movie stuff, like anything, and that just hear what is out there and make yourself aware for sure.
Well, and I would imagine that like having those additional opportunities, like it's creating an additional revenue stream too.
Yes.
Like it's, putting all your eggs in one basket is, in my opinion, never really a good thing. I've made the transition from corporate to entrepreneurship recently, and that was something that, I kind of missed the boat on, is like identifying and developing out new revenue streams prior to making that transition.
Okay.
So like I would think that helps lessen the blow a little bit, when maybe not nearly as much as you were doing beforehand, but it at least creates revenue stream and income opportunity outside of the sport too.
Sure. What's cool about that too is, maybe if I was to be completely honest, I'll admit to the fact that, maybe I'm still in a huge transition, because the way I viewed it, I talk to my parents often about this too, is like, in my mind, I would love to, as far as like corporate world goes, right? I wish I could build something into getting onto a board. I feel like mentalities that you do create in soccer or in sports in general, if I had the business knowledge or experience, because I'm not saying it's easy at all. I'm just saying once you get to these things, I think I do well in those positions. But in the meantime, I find with acting, one revenue stream. I've been doing some alumni stuff with the Galaxy. I feel like I don't have the liberty to just trade time for money in the corporate world yet, because I want to set up these things. And one thing we'll dive into too is I'm equity holder with the Iron Buffet DNA, which is a supplement brand, but more of a tech company because they do fitness apps and stuff like. And so I just, now that I do have that time to focus on different things, and automation is a thing in the world, crazy. Like, imagine how much stuff you can set up before you then jump to that. So maybe, I guess I'm still in that transition thing, I guess.
Well, I think we're always in somewhat of a different phase, right?
Yeah.
Like whether it's transitioning out of a sport, whether it's going, from a regular entry level position to jumping up to a leadership role, whether it's going from corporate to entrepreneurship, you're constantly redefining yourself. And for people, especially athletes that are really high performers, setting those goals and always having something to achieve is like critical, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah. I am kind of one of those guys that writes a checklist and likes to check them off. So I guess getting these different things going and all the business stuff you have going on with the Sports to Suits, and I just have found I've looked at so many pitch decks over the last few years. It's just like I love it. You know what I mean? Like
there's some really cool stuff going on in the market right now. There's so many new cool technologies that are coming out. Like, it's amazing to me.
Yeah, the metaverse, all this stuff, it just blows my mind, because I've always been a huge techie. I'm on that weird borderline of like, computers weren't always around in my life, so I'm not one of the younger guys where it's just like, coders at the age of 12, although I do have some knowledge about that. But it's just mind-blowing, and it's just as much of a tool as it can be not a tool for you, if you're investing too much time into it and stuff. So it's this, all things in moderation, right?
So let's talk a little bit about this, because you and I share in this too. So I still have found a career in the sports industry. You're still doing stuff in the sports industry. I think that there's a lot of athletes out there that once they leave the sport, they think that's it.
Yes.
Right. But what we've kind of demonstrated is there's so much opportunity in the sports industry. You may not be, playing soccer on the field professionally at this time, but you're still doing commentating. Like, share a little bit about how you stay engaged with sports.
So, like we kind of mentioned, where, I not turned my back, but it was sad. I'm so competitive.
Terrible.
I'm so competitive. When I see people I know, whatever, I'm like, I should still be playing. You know what I mean? Like, and so that competitive drive's in you. But after that period of time went by, it's so funny. My dad, now that I don't play, he was the same way. Like, he's like, he didn't want to watch it either. But after a certain period of time,
on the field.
Yeah, he wasn't even on the field, but he loved it that much for me too. But after that time period goes by, it's such a big thing in my life, and I'm still very passionate about the sport. Reaching out to the Galaxy, they kind of made it feel like a family. Those years were very special years. We won 2 championships, got to 3 championships, only won 2 of them. And so you got to reach out. A lot of professional athletes too, once you get to a certain level, you think kind of sometimes the opportunities come to you, and I'm sure that's true for some people.
That's a critical point. Like,
you're
saying something right here that is so profound. And if anybody's listening, regardless of if you're an athlete or if you're in business, like, you have to do the work to reach out.
Yes. Yes. I've been told by a few mentors, just like, there's no time not to. There really isn't. Worst case scenario, it's no, but don't feel like you don't need help from time to time, especially transitioning out of the sport. A lot of people aren't forced to retire at the age of 25. Like, it's not the norm. So yes, what are you gonna do? And you can ask and build that. So. I just feel like if anyone's watching sports-wise, definitely feel the opportunity to reach out. So I've been in touch with the Galaxy for a while, and so I was doing, just their second team games that spun into the first team games with commentary. And because I've been at every game too, a lot of the alumni contact me directly. So this year we had a new program, bringing back a lot of our alumni, putting them in a suite with their family. It's been very, very lovely to reconnect to those guys too, because now it's a different kind of relationship too, because on the field sometimes it's just competitive, whatever. But now you get to relink with these guys. They're all doing good, a lot of families. So yeah, that's I don't know if that answered completely, but
yeah, I mean, it's cool. And that's another thing that you talk about, like, as far as team is concerned. Like, when you're working as a team on the field, you're hyper focused. There may be a little bit of conflict, there may be a little drama, but you guys have to operate as a team.
yeah.
Same thing in business. Like, when it's go time, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But then there's also that aspect of developing the relationship. So, like, you have gone about probably watching these people grow their families and being part of that team.
I'd have to say I think I'm nicer mentally in business than I am in sports, because I don't know what it is with competitiveness, right? But I've noticed this too, and I like to say sometimes, let's just say someone plays the same position as you do, right? And again, your whole life was invested into this sport, and a lot of times when you talk to the top pros, that's one thing you do hear from them. And not to make this sports sound like this, but there is a true aspect of this, is like, it's your family's food or the next person's based on performance, really. And so it's sometimes it's even hard. I've had friends over the years that play the same position, and I noticed this specifically. All forwards on the team sometimes have a harder time just being friends. And one thing that's very sad about it to me is I'm a very different personality off the field, and I like to reflect and think about these things. And there's people I would be total friends with, but at the time, maybe we weren't treating each other so good or anything, because we were competing. But now, look, I'm out of the sport or whatever, and anybody that's been in my life, I wish to connect with, and I only wish good things for. So I find that really interesting dynamic.
That is super interesting, because you would think, like, and this is like the behind the scenes thing, right? Like, you would think everybody's totally jiving, everybody has to operate as a team, but like, you're having to, like, it's a competition. Like, if you want to be on the field, you have to earn your spot there. And there's always somebody there that's like interested in taking that spot. So I would imagine it causes a little bit of conflict.
Yeah. In business, I more so find performance, because sports is so, like, you can literally yell profanities at somebody in sports, and it's so weird. It's almost like like, that guy gets it, right? Like, it might not make him feel good or anything, but it's like, perform, right? In business,
it's the culture. Like, that's the culture of sports.
Yes. But in business, I wouldn't necessarily imagine. I still, from time to time, that is a part of me. But in business, to get someone's best performance, I don't know if I would instantly revert to anything like that, because I don't think, does that make sense?
I would hope not. Well, but that's an interesting transition piece, right? It's a mindset component. Like, you are conditioned to not just compete, but compete like at such a freakish level that, like, you're having to, like, think about, okay, I've got to outperform this person. And even though you have to do that in business as well, if you're in like a sales capacity or something like that, it is a very different type of competition.
Yes.
And you can't bring the toxicity that existed on the field into business.
Sure. And tell me your opinion, actually. One thing I find, though, is out of absolute care, sometimes I give just raw, straight fact, whatever. And I think people might misperceive that as like mean or whatever. But really, it's because I absolutely care and want you to do good, in which I give just where I think you can go. I don't know if that's part of you at all.
That to me is like the positioning of positive intent, right? It's who, like, what is the intent behind what is being said? Like,
okay,
from sports, like, it is a very, like, black and white, bold, like, courageous. You've got to be competitive. Like, that's a different environment, and that is okay to carry over to business, as long as you're positioning it appropriately and not bringing the toxicity along with it, right?
Yes.
That's allowed in certain areas, not in business.
Yes.
And that's a hard transition for people to make. But if you know how to make it,
Yes.
and you've learned how to make it, man, that is such a superpower in business that a lot of people don't recognize that they have as former athletes.
Yes, this might sound crazy too, but the acting side of things and putting yourself in different positions, you know, in my life, I never thought of being anybody else. I wanted to be a soccer player, and I was me. In acting, and you putting yourself in other places gives you these compassions towards situations you might never find yourself. And I feel like there's a huge part of that. You know, I've had different style trainings in acting now too, and just putting myself in those positions gives me compassion towards certain things. So in business, I found that helps big time too.
So what do you think? I had somebody tell me the other day that they were taking improv classes. So this is really interesting. So he's a business leader, business executive, business owner, serial entrepreneur, and he was saying that he takes improv classes because it gets him the opportunity to think on the fly, to be in those different roles, to like get random things thrown at him. What are your thoughts about incorporating different, maybe creative aspects into your business roles?
Anyone watching this, you might think this sounds completely silly. Until you jumped into an improv class, you wouldn't know how it's going to benefit your life. I'm dead serious about this because number one, in business classes, when I was in college, thinking outside the box is huge, right? If you don't acknowledge that as a business person, I'm like, what's going on? So thinking outside the box, this forces you to be uncomfortable. Literally, I'm an actor. I wouldn't necessarily say I am so confident to sing in front of everybody, right? Like that's just nothing I've done really, right? But first day of improv class for me, we were singing opera about what we ate for breakfast that morning. So it's super uncomfortable stuff that pushes you. Now you think on the fly, you go with what it is, and in business, a lot of things that happen, you don't. Sometimes you don't expect it, or whatever, and you need to be able to think on the fly. And I think that would really help a lot of people. I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's not something that I ever really considered, but I was like, like that makes sense to me. Like that's a really incredible opportunity because like let's face it, and like I don't know, I'm curious on your thoughts on this too. Like I think the C-suite roles are changing in business. I think rather than being behind the scenes, like you are the face of the company. So I don't care if you're a CEO, a CTO, which is typically behind the scenes, a CFO, like you are the face of the company. And so you've got to learn how to do public speaking or how to, do all these random things that I don't think maybe even 10 years ago that was a requirement of the role.
Yeah. Well, two things there. Number one, compliment to yourself. I think you'd be just fine. These little conversations that you have too, I've watched a few. You naturally progress with conversation and stuff, so I feel like you're on it already. So that's for you. But other people too, and what you're saying with business roles, the Elon Musks and these guys, you can capitalize on personality and what you stand for, and let that be something that can drive you even more business. So I would tell anybody in a role like that to utilize who they are too, because if you're smart doing great things in business already, people want to get to know you, and often people more familiarized with why you're doing something, and the more they get to know you, they invest in you like that. So highly suggest all those stuff.
So I don't know about you. Like, let's talk a little bit about education, because I know that you have such a story around this. So you stopped going to school, to college, with only, like you said, 16 hours or something, not very much time left to graduate, but you did that so that you could focus on soccer. But now you are back in school.
Yes. Just
so how is that as a, you're an adult as a college kid, but you don't have the same, I don't think, life experiences. So what is it like jumping back into college?
Very, very funny. So number one, shout out to Oregon State University. It was a interesting road, to say the least. Back then there was a program, if you did go pro, they'd invite you back with scholarship and stuff. I do understand that the curriculum changes over time. I just didn't know it changed that much. I had a whole like year and a half or something when I was looking at coming back. I was able to talk with their business board and everything, and they were very, very, very accommodating. They understood the situation, and it was a weird case. So I was able to come back and get it done in the double the amount of time I had to be, but it was 6 months. But the difference was, again, even in college, I went to college knowing I want to play pro. I didn't drink in college. I think I drank a few times. I didn't really drink professionally either. So I've always had that mindset. So I approached college, and my friends were having fun, and I would have fun too. But once I come back, it's so funny having that perspective, because you have lived life. You did go to college. You did have fun. You get those things. And so I'd have these group projects, right? And I loved all my groups. If they see this at all, they know this. And I don't mind at that stage, because I don't want to sit with like anticipation, like, are they going to do this? Not, I'll just do it all. I didn't care, right? And we were in the pandemic, so I was like, I need stuff to do anyways. So, but that was what's so funny, is these kids that they're just having a good time. Maybe they show up to the meeting out of it, or they don't show up at all. I just thought that dynamic was so funny, of just like, hey, look, no, they're living life. I wasn't mad about it.
So what did you think about the curriculum itself? Like, and this is not, so I don't want to like bash the education system, because I think that it has a place, right? And you learn, like, there's great schools out there, colleges are awesome. So this is not, I don't want to go into like the whole, like, what is that they're like, we totally need to reinvent the education system. But I do think, something that we were talking about, improv classes, like these things, these soft skills that business is now requiring, is not something typically that is offered in college. So like, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's one of those topics, right?
That's a heavy topic. And like I said, I don't want to bash education.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I do feel like that like the market itself, the job market, like it's totally shifting.
Sure.
And so education is having to shift. And there's some like serious gaps between what's being taught versus what, do you know what I'm saying? Like I
totally do. And my opinion on it is more so the fact of, I talked to this group of actors maybe 2 years ago near Christmas, and they were all, what do you call that? Home educated? Homeschooled. And we were talking about the certain things of like what they thought they got from that in trade-off of not going to school, right? And I believe school provides a huge thing, as a social aspect to it, that I mean, you can get that other places, but I think that's huge. Like, when your pets play with others and they kind of learn their place of what. Does that make sense?
No, it's so true. I homeschooled my daughter last year during COVID. Like, I get it. I saw like, and now, it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because it's not just like the social aspect being at home, but now her going back to school.
Sure.
And the dynamics, like now we're in middle school and you're having to navigate all of that. Like, it's just it's different. She's having to like kind of rethink through the social aspect.
Yes. And as much as businesses in the future go more and more tech, there are the CEOs and these part that need to be sociable and talk with their guys, rally their troops. So I really feel like that is a huge aspect. But they were saying basically like, oh, they didn't think they needed it because blah, blah, blah. They learned this. Well, I am extremely appreciative for school. If you knew me all through life, you'd never think I'd say that. But literally, there are certain things that you don't even realize that you're picking up by doing it. At the same time as I say that, there are different aspects like taxes and certain life things. When I look back, I would have loved to learn that. You know what I mean? Like this would be so valuable to me at this point. And if they're that obvious, I really do think whether it's businesses having a hand in hand and coming down, and I'm sure that already takes place possibly. but really driving what the new aspects they are looking, whether it's improv, whether it's whatever these is, maybe a more of a partnership to where we could really drive better for America, better for the world, if that makes sense.
I will never forget this, and this is not anything I've ever shared. But so in college, I will never forget it. I was going to my public speaking class, and at that time, I was terrified. We were supposed to give a presentation, and I was presenting on gymnastics. Like, I knew the subject matter expert, right? I'm like, I can't fail this one. But I literally walked in and I freaking cried the whole time, and I about threw up and walked out. Like, I was mortified, which is why I've had such a problem with public speaking.
Oh, wow.
And so, like, I think about this, and I think about athletes, and I think about like the superpowers that athletes have, and your background in commentating and all that stuff. Like, one of the biggest things that we can do, in my opinion, is overcome and prepare for public speaking, or overcoming fear of being rejected or whatever it may be.
Yeah, this reminds me of one funny story in my life, and I don't know what it'll offer. I'm just gonna go for it and tell me what you pick up out of it. I with sports too, you know how people have little ticks or certain things like this, and all these things. I think in everybody's mind too, there's these different levels of I don't know if it's ADD or what. There's certain things you have to overcome within yourself, just being aware of it. Well, I remember every kid, I believe, is probably scared of the dark, right? I had this game room at the back of my house, and there was a sliding glass door. And at nighttime, you can never see out if there's lights inside. You can only see in. So I was always like scared, like who's there? And my mind told me though, and this could be a terrible idea for other situations, but my mind told me just like, why am I scared of this? You should push yourself, right? And so I would dare myself to go and stand up against this glass window and see what happened. And I don't think most kids would have that, thought or whatever, but I did it. I cried, right? I cried during it, but then I realized I lived. And so all I'm trying to do is, or say in a message wise, is a lot of things that you're scared to do or whatever. And obviously there's situations like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if you push yourself to do it with like the speaking or whatever, you got to start somewhere.
You've got to overcome fear. And that's something like you performed at the highest freaking level, aside from European soccer, which you said earlier. Yep. It's different. But a lot of people won't push themselves to overcome the fears that they have. And your fear was the dark. I had a very serious fear about public speaking. But there's always that something. And what people don't recognize is if you overcome that fear, you may be stepping right in front of one of the biggest gifts
exactly
that you could ever have. So like, did you ever experience like fear as it relates to like the game or all the fans? Like, what were your thoughts about the environment? It's crazy. Like, soccer games are crazy. I love them. They're crazy. But like, did you ever have any of that stuff that you had to overcome as part of the game?
Yeah. Going from college, we had a few hundred fans, possibly 1,000 at the max. Or actually, when we played at UCLA and a few different places, there's a few thousand there. When I went professionally my first year, I loved it because it was almost like this training ground for what was to become. Because there's even at the professional level, there's a huge jump. Let me just explain this. At Portland Timbers, which the Timber Army up there, that was a huge fan base for this was a second division team at the time. I think max they get like about 8,000 to 12,000 fans, so it was great. But a lot of the games maybe 4,000 or something like this. And so you walk out onto the field from college to that, and it was like a thing. Like, oh wow, look at these people that come out, whatever, right? And literally, so quickly, within 3 games, it was just natural to process it like this. I instantly ruled it out. I didn't hear people. I didn't, you have that initial, but it's all on yourself. A lot of the times in sports with nervousness, I heard Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. I just still bummed about that. I heard him say a quote once where as nervousness, he viewed it different than me. But I think that people should allow themselves to feel that nervousness, because that's just you wanting to do well. And if you remind yourself of that, it's no other pressure than you wanting to do good. And so it kind of relieves, and it makes it more human. It's not like you have to have ice in the veins and stuff like that. No, 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 no. You're there for a reason, baby. You've been doing this for 20 years. Feel that nervousness. Go out there and perform, because you're just as good as your last performance. You go do what you know how to do.
That applies in business as well.
Yes,
Like
yes.
this totally applies in business.
Yes. And so I don't know. I just, for any business people watching this too, mentality wise, like affirmations, all this stuff is so like, you might think it's silly. No, as far as being positive, driving yourself to do good stuff. Oh man, I wish I could share. We talked to a sports psychologist in college, and I think that's the biggest thing my college coach actually was able to give me, because we had a rough relationship, my college coach. But he introduced us to the sports psychologist, and just visualizing your performance and all that stuff. I took that and did that for my whole rest of my career. And I think in the business world too, if you have a speech or something, you yourself, I'm talking to you, Amanda, just talking the confidence that you gave me, just talking me into this show, right? Like you create a certain vibe for me, and I step into it or whatever. So you do that for yourself, really. And before any talk you have, you're gonna go crush it and allow yourself. Look, we mess up. What's the pressure? Yeah, I'm human, right?
That is like, and that's another thing with like athletes. Athletes are terrible about this. Is like when you go from sports to business, like you think that you're going to be up here, you've crushed it in the sports world, so you're going to go over to this and you're going to be at the highest level that you possibly can. Like that is totally not the freaking case, people. Like if you are entry level into business, you're entry level into business.
Yes.
Was that hard? Like, is that hard? Do you see that's hard for people in the athletic community? Thanks, Tabitha, for popping in.
Oh, Tabitha, thank you. Yeah, and even now, right? Because one thing I really do believe, and this is just, and I hope people take this way, honestly, these business people have been doing it for years. I have not. I acknowledge this. One thing I do truly wish, though, is, yeah, I am not at that level. I do believe that I have certain mentalities, though, that through my lifetime I've accumulated. And when I talk to it does seem like it's not the norm. And so I wish I was able to, like, even when I speak with the Galaxy, I know what certain problems are on the business end. Because, too, I would hate for people to just look at me like, oh, I've heard this quote in the last few years, too, like, oh, you're just an athlete or whatever. I'm so confused by that, because yes, I can see how there's a stigma with everything, and maybe whether some athletes didn't go to school or whatever, but some of us, a large portion of the soccer community that made it, the road was through college, right? And so if I was to know what the business problems are and the inner workings behind it, I would love that information, because I do better like that. And I think I have stuff to offer. And that's my confidence to say I really do feel like I would have value added, Find
athletes and give them proper coaching. This is something that was so key to me. I didn't get a business coach because I didn't know that I needed one, right? Like I thought I was just going to figure this thing out. And granted, I had some good mentors, but the minute I got a business coach, it clicked for me. I was like, oh, I get it.
Oh, really?
I get it. I was like, I understand. And I had somebody constantly like, as athletes, we have like this playbook, or we have this, kind of like all these repetitions, and you do the same thing over and over again. And so if you have that translated in business, it's so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
For former athletes, because that's how we're conditioned.
Yes. I don't mind reps, getting it down. Actually, that's so funny in acting. There is a component of acting where you want to just be natural in the moment, right? So a lot of the way I like to run it, though, is very, I have certain things that I want to hit. And so it's very, not mechanical, but repetitious, right? And so once I feel that natural form, though, then you can express and do something new. But I'm curious what big things your business coach, what you took from that. Like, what was your number one
structure?
Structure.
Like the biggest thing for me was like identifying how to take all these crazy, like disparate things and put structure to it. and then actually crush it based on the structure.
Got it.
You and I can talk about this offline. So I want to talk about what you're up to now. So you do acting, you do commentating, you do all these things, but share a little bit about your entrepreneurship journey, because that, I think for athletes, entrepreneurship is a great option. Like, I didn't know, I grew up in a small town. I didn't know about entrepreneurship. And then I found out, I got connected to some entrepreneurs and I was like, oh, this may be an option for me, right?
Yeah.
For athletes, it's a great avenue because we have this crazy mentality and we have this crazy drive. Like, tell me a little bit about your entrepreneurship journey.
Let's see. I think, again, just like what you're saying, you notice it. I think it's innate in some people where, I don't know, some things just hit me sometimes as like logical. And can I even say it's logical? Because it's not what other people think. But with automation today and everything, and when you think about just wealth in general, right? Like I really never thought about money too much, to be honest. In my life, I just wanted to play soccer, right? Like that's all it was. And then you get this contract and it becomes this different thing. And
it becomes business.
Yes, it becomes business. And then you get to a certain age and then, you're seeing young guys and the contracts are changing. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is my journey into that always was, even when I was playing soccer and I didn't want to be on my feet, my cousin, I think very high on him, his name's Paul. He has his own online business and he was kind of took over the online website, a company. It was hair clips called Lila Rose. And I do graphic design, like I told you, from college, and video editing. I kind of self-taught. I knew that. And we had a platform where I could jump into Adobe, use all these products. So I started to shoot little commercials for them, which is so funny because I act too. So I got experience on both sides of it.
Well, you're killing it on social media. Your videos are freaking awesome. Like, I love, like, I started, like, this is kind of weird, but like I was looking at like some of your background and stuff, and like, go check out the Instagram. The videos are freaking cool. I don't know. Are you editing those videos? Because they're freaking cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much, to be honest. There's these little passions we have in life and we don't really talk about. And it's so funny because it's a blessing and a curse. Just like in sports, I was kind of one of those guys that was just athletic so I could play different spots. Well, now in life, I have so many interests, right? I like being behind the camera editing, but I also want to be in front of camera to show personality. So it's like this huge thing. Thank you so much for saying that, because I really like video editing. Some of the things I've been doing, stunts, another thing I do, and so I get
cool.
I've been getting we've been training for a Western that might be shooting next year, and so I've been doing a lot of gunslinging and horse stunts, and so I clipped that together. You can find that on my social medias. But back to your question, just like just entrepreneurship, right? I really started just by doing that, and sending invoices that way. And I felt like, well, look, I do enjoy this dynamic of I get to work on my computer whenever I want, and so that just spun into, though, if I could do something, if I could offer something. A lot of it's like consulting, right? If I would have these certain connections and I could actually plug people, I don't necessarily have to be there. Amanda, you have great things going. If I can introduce you to blah, 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 and then you guys get together, have great business or whatever, maybe I can get compensated about that. And I feel like over the time, I've really appreciated the value of a consultant, because sometimes too, it's like, hey, we're friends. Why don't you introduce me? And I get that too. And sometimes I do that for people. But at the same time too, there is value for that relationship. I've conducted myself a certain way in life, and I've showed up for people over and over again. And so if you come through me, I feel like people view me that way. And
it is okay to ask for referral fees.
Yeah.
That is okay to do. I think a lot of people are like a little bit leery about connecting people and like just trying to do it out of the kindness, which is great too. But like, that is a service ad.
Yes.
Like,
and there is customer acquisition costs. And so like when you really get into the back end of the business side too, to explain this to your friend, it might be, rough or whatever. But at the same time, when you get really into the business side of that, I think you start to understand and you're providing value. So I don't know. I got off topic so many times here, but
that's okay. And we've got to totally wrap this up. I want to be super respectful of your time.
yes.
And this has been such a powerful conversation. What would you give as far as like, what is the piece of advice that you would give to people that are going from sports to the business community?
Sports to the business community. Number one, be open. Be open. Take it in. Allow yourself to learn again. I would also say that same confidence that got you where you are, because the two, what do you call it? It's you want to continue with that confidence, but be humble enough to take in that information, and once you get enough of that information, you will be a powerhouse. You'll do good. Just allow it some time. You don't know everything. We all don't know everything.
We never will.
No.
But if you surround yourself with incredible people,
Yes,
and become part of a team where you have your superpowers, but then you pull in somebody else, like that applies in every single aspect of life. Teams apply. It's so critical to get that right.
Yeah, as a single person, who's really crushing it? When you look at these corporations, these huge things, this is one thing. One quote I got when I was playing was, yes, okay, I'm a player on the Galaxy, but affiliated with just the name the Galaxy provides this whole different level of exposure, and you need to really understand that, because yes, Amanda, you have value, right? But if we can create something that really changes people's lives, and it's this huge other different beast, that's something we should be promoting, and you want to be a part of that, not just a you thing. Like, even
it's never a you thing.
No. So, but attached to that was just self-belief. Anybody out there, even there's difficult things we all face in life, and just keep believing in yourself. Be open. Take it all in.
So, Bryan, to wrap up this conversation, if people are interested in learning more about you, what are the best ways for them to do so?
Well, I would love them. If there's any more backstory-ish stuff, or if you want to check me out too, social media-wise, at BJ_6 is my Instagram. But if they want to reach out to me, an email, you can obviously write me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. I would love to hear from anybody with questions. And to be honest, I'm so passionate about different projects. If there was opportunity, I'm being honest, there's still, I feel like I have more to give. And if things worked out synergy-wise, I would love it. But they can also reach out to my email. It's bjordan, JORDAN 06@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for joining today. We're going to have you come back on. I'm thinking about bringing on board a bunch of different athletes to talk about different topics. I think that would be like super fascinating.
That would be cool. The back and forth would be interesting.
Yeah, they'll like maybe debate.
Debates.
Sports debate.
That'd be fun.
So I do these chats usually every week. With the holidays, we've got a little bit of some crazy schedules, but I can't thank you guys enough for continuing to tune in and support the show. So grateful for you guys, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your week. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Amanda. Thank you for everybody else for tuning in.
Bye.
Thank you.